This is the Begode Hero. It's a 2,800 watt motor with a 1,800 watt hour battery. This is out here to replace the Begode X, that terrible suspension wheel that Begode came out with last year. Arguably one of the worst suspension EUCs ever put out, or the worst EUC ever made actually. Is the Hero a worthy replacement of the X? And in what ways is this better than the S20 Eagle? Well, watch this video and find out. So for starters, this is a much better wheel than the X. The suspension works a whole lot better, and the ride is smooth with plenty of torque. This is a torque motor. The taillight, in my opinion, is one of the best looking taillights on any EUC. And they've also included these stock power pads, which fit directly on the design of the wheel. Now, I do wish that these stock pads are a little bit wider. They also come with stock spiked pedals. These spiked pedals are made by Begode, and they're one of the best spike pedals I've ever tried. They're aggressive in their height of the spikes, and they work just really well. And the handle. The handle, even though it looks very similar to the S18, it actually has a spring-loaded mechanism. So when you click it into the lowest position, it won't bounce out. And when you push the button on the top, it actually springs out. So it's actually quite simple to use. Now, let's talk about the suspension. At this current time, Begode has not told me exactly what PSI I should be using. Now, given my knowledge of being on two of their suspension wheels, I figured around 200 PSI is roughly what I should be using at about 88 kilos. They've basically just told me, feel it out. Not really the most scientific answer. I wish they told me exactly what. I have since lowered it a little bit. There is no dampening on the suspension, so what you get is a really fast rebound. And if you go over speed bumps, it sounds like it's gonna hit itself because it rebounds so quick, and there isn't anything to soften that rebound. Now, the suspension is bouncy and it's comfortable, and it's good for city riding. However, just like the V11, I would not recommend using this as a trail riding machine. If it's pretty smooth, flat trails, then okay, but if it's aggressive trails or just really uneven terrain, expect to go slower. You won't be cruising as you would on something with a dampening system. So just by looking at the design of the Begode Hero, you can tell that they've integrated the seat. Now, there isn't a foam on top, but you can, add some piece of neoprene foam on the top if you'd like. But as I said in my previous video on the Commander, I thought that was an unbelievable wheel to sit and ride. This one beats that out. Your butt kind of just sits right here, and you don't have to worry about it sliding off because you have this curvature. Probably one of the best wheels to sit and ride, given that this has suspension and the Commander does not. Additionally, because these power pads are not as wide, you're actually able to sit and not have your bent legs kind of being blocked by these stock pads. So I guess that's a benefit if you're a seated rider. These stock pads will work well. I don't sit and ride that much, so I would still like power pads that are a bit wider. So let's talk about the lights. The lights are pretty pathetic, as you guys would expect. It's the same lights as the Commander. And you guys knew that I was pretty unhappy with the Commander lights. This is no exception. They're pretty shit too. The good news is that around that area, there's a lot of flat surfaces, so you would be able to find a way of, having a friend 3D print and putting a flashlight mount on there for you. But don't expect these to be any good for night riding.
I've been shining under city lights. All this doubt around me, then but look, I got it right. Don't you try to hit me, now you live a petty life. All those nights I lay awake, I pray for better life. Now I wake up with a baddie like I said I might. This a better life, you never tried, I bet it right. This a better life, you never tried, I bet it right. You been stuck is where you at.
The build quality is exceptional. As you guys can see with this tumble down the hill, this is a 50-degree slope. This slope is so steep that I was basically half scared to death going down it. Most of my friends climbed all the way up, but I was kind of way too scared to go all the way up to the top. And you know, being able to ride a wheel up a 50-degree slope, first, amazing performance, how this wheel did not burn up. But also, when it tumbled down the hill, it sustained little damage. The only damage it really sustained was this. Now, the stand still works, but I think it's bent, and which has caused this rear side to kind of not match. Now, I think I'll be able to put this back in place. I don't think it's a big issue. Suspension is fine. The top cover kind of popped off, just kind of slapped it, and then it went back into place. But basically, you know, a few scratches here and there. One of the best built Begode wheels ever put out on the market, I would say.
Don't second guess it, I let it set it. It's God's plan, we out here only accepting blessings. I'm stuck with it, this mindset is terminal. In and out different terminals, leveling up is personal. Now I already made it, y'all can miss me. I smack my girl's ass, tell her pinch me. It's hard to believe I made something from...
So is this wheel better than the X? I would say so. It's a whole lot better in terms of suspension. The ride feels a lot more comfortable. The wheel feels balanced. This has a newer firmware. The motherboard is still, you know, their typical Begode motherboards, but they've done something with the firmware which makes the wheel feel refined. And the wheel, how the wheel is balanced is just really easy to control. So I do like that about the wheel. The X didn't have a good suspension and it didn't feel all that nice to ride. The XN, on the other hand, was a fairly good wheel, but that I would say came out kind of by mistake. Now, is this better than the S20? I would say it's better in two ways. If you like a seated riding experience and you want a better handle. This wheel is a lot better to sit and ride than the S20, and the handle is a lot easier to use because the handle on the S20 is at the front, so you kind of have to flip it around to use. But if you don't care about those two aspects, I would still think the S20 is still a better suspension wheel than the Hero. But that's basically my summary of the Begode Hero. Unbelievable, robust suspension wheel by Begode. Best suspension wheel that Begode has ever put out. Definitely the target of trying to beat out and replace the X. They've definitely done it with the Hero. So if you're interested in picking up the Begode Hero, check out the link below. This video is sponsored kindly by EVs, which is a EUC scooter and e-skate dealer based out of Vancouver, Canada, but they do ship to anywhere in North America. So check them out in the link below, or search EEVEES, yes, it's kind of like the Pokemon, on Google, and you should be able to find them.